The Bronny experiment used up immense political capital. You have to ask yourself, is there a limit to even the king's leverage when the player just hasn't achieved that baseline competence on merit? And what does it say about the future of college sports when a scholarship becomes a transactional tax that yields zero on-court contribution? The story of the James family, arguably the most scrutinized bloodline in the history of North American sports, has reached a critical inflection point. For nearly 20 years, LeBron James hasn't just been a basketball player. He's been a force of nature, reshaping teams, dominating headlines, and influencing the development of everyone around him. Now, that spotlight extends to his sons, LeBron, Bronny James Jr., and Bryce Maximus James, both of whom have been thrust into the incandescent spotlight of their father's legacy. So for years, the narrative around LeBron James' sons was, well, it was almost perfectly scripted, wasn't it? This narrative posited that while Bronny James was an undersized, defensive-minded role player, his younger brother Bryce was the true heir, the prince who possessed the prototypical NBA frame, the smooth shooting stroke, and the latent star potential that his older brother allegedly lacked. Wait for Bryce quickly became a common saying as expectations began drifting toward LeBron's younger son. However, as the 2025 to 2026 basketball calendar unfolds, this narrative has collided violently with reality. A closer look at the numbers, the film, and each player's developmental trajectories reveals a starkly different truth. Bryce James hasn't just failed to outpace his older brother, he's fallen well short of the baseline Bronny had already established at the same stages of his development. So how does a player with, frankly, single-digit scoring averages in high school lands a spot at a program like Arizona, and whether that NBA dream is even viable at this point? Okay, so let's start with the baseline, Bronny's floor. I love to criticize him, but he was a legitimate talent. The athleticism was off the charts. He hit a 40.5-inch max vertical at the NBA draft combine. That's not just hype, that's a real physical foundation. It is. And then you pivot to Bryce, and the contrast is, well, it's pretty stark. He's taller, 6'6" versus Bronny at 6'2". Yeah, he has the height, but the production just wasn't there. His senior year, he was averaging somewhere between like 8 and 12 points per game. That's a drop-off, and the recruiting rankings reflect that. Bronny was a consensus top 50 guy. Bryce was ranked outside the top 148. They weren't even in the same conversation, but the whole narrative was built around his shooting, the smoother stroke. He has good mechanics, but that really doesn't mean shit, because mechanics are one thing, but efficiency and results are another. On the Nike EYBL circuit, you know, against the best competition, he averaged just 6.9 points, and he shot about 36% from three. Yeah, which is fine, it's functional, but it's not specialist territory. It's not what gets you drafted. It's not just the stats, no. It's the eye test failure. He plays, what's called high and narrow. Bryce James is fucking flat-footed and doofy, plain and simple. Meaning what exactly? Meaning he's rigid and too upright with the ball, which causes you to lack functional burst. All my ballers know that you need to get low in order to blow past somebody. Look how low his father have to get to blow past George. That lateral quickness is necessary. It makes him a defensive liability, and at the next level, you just can't hide that. The lower you get, the more explosive you can be. Please take a moment to subscribe. I usually do this at the end of the video so I don't break immersion or ruin the story, but the increase of views haven't equated to an increase in subscribers. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of the video. So if the on-court stuff is that clear, let's talk about the recruitment paradox. The gap between how the James brothers are perceived and what they've actually produced on the court says a lot about the power of branding. Bronny James, despite the polarizing nature of his 2024 NBA draft selection, entered the professional ranks with a defined, albeit limited, skill set. His early struggles were widely expected, and they came in the context of adjusting to the toughest competition in the world. Bryce James, on the other hand, has largely been defined by projection rather than performance. The idea that Bryce is better leaned heavily on his growth spurt. By 15, he was already taller than Bronny, and a handful of highlight clips showing tough jumpers in low-pressure settings. Those visuals hid more concerning trends: minimal production when competition stiffened, limited lateral quickness, and a passive approach that contrasts sharply with Bronny's constant engagement and motor. Looking at the data from the 2024-25 high school season and the early stages of the 2025-26 college year, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. While Bronny was fighting for minutes against NBA stars, Bryce struggled to hold his spot against varsity-level competition and now can't break into a college rotation. Strip away the last names and the picture changes entirely. A player who, without the pull of his father's influence, would more likely be grinding at a low major or Division II program than sitting on the bench of a Big 12 contender. To understand why Bryce James is worse than his brother, it's important to first establish what Bronny James actually was as a prospect. Bronny James is an awful NBA player, but looking at his pre-NBA resume, Bronny was a legitimate high-major Division I player with skills that projected, at least in limited ways. Bronny's senior season at Sierra Canyon in 2022 to 2023 provides the cleanest comparison point to Bryce's senior year in 2024 to 2025. During this campaign, Bronny operated under intense scrutiny, but delivered a statistically significant performance that justified his status as a top 50 recruit. His value also extended well beyond the box score. Bronny had the lateral quickness to stay in front of top guards, the strength to fight through screens, and the instincts to rotate and help. A critical differentiator between the brothers is functional athleticism. Bronny James inherited a specific subset of his father's athletic traits: explosive vertical leaping ability and, more importantly, lateral fluidity. This explosiveness allowed him to finish lobs in transition and chase down blocks, a signature James family trait. Bronny possesses a low center of gravity, allowing him to absorb contact and change direction fluidly. This biomechanical advantage is the foundation of his defensive potential. Bronny James was a legitimate D1 starter and is currently a functional G League professional. He is not a star, but he is a player. This is the bar Bryce must clear. If Bronny James set a floor at a fringe G League player, Bryce James has struggled to even reach that level. The idea that Bryce is worse isn't just narrative. It shows up clearly when you look at his production, or lack of it. The clearest comparison comes from their senior seasons at Sierra Canyon. Bryce entered his final year with notable advantages. He was taller than Bronny, had a more NBA-ready frame, and faced less competition for shots than Bronny did while sharing the floor with players like Amari Bailey. Even so, Bryce's statistical output lagged well behind his brothers, underscoring just how wide the gap between perception and performance really is. Bryce James committing to the University of Arizona, a perennial top 10 program, stands out as one of the strangest recruiting stories of the 2025 class. How does a player ranked outside the top 140 with modest production land a scholarship at a blue blood program? The answer has less to do with basketball and more to do with relationships, influence, and branding. It's impossible to examine this recruitment without acknowledging the role of Clutch Sports Group, led by Rich Paul, LeBron James's longtime agent and close confidant. Bryce's recruitment appears to have been part of a broader ecosystem play rather than a standalone evaluation. Arizona was aggressively pursuing elite talent, including Koa Pete, a consensus top 5 five-star prospect. Pete has long been rumored to align with Clutch for representation, and in today's recruiting landscape, these relationships matter. Programs often accept connector players, lesser talents tied to powerful agencies or elite prospects to strengthen recruiting pipelines. Taking Bryce James costs Arizona little on the court while offering massive upside in visibility and future access to top-tier recruits. From Arizona's perspective, the James surname carries value regardless of production. The school is a Nike program, and the James family is synonymous with Nike basketball. That alignment alone makes the synergy obvious and makes Bryce a marketable asset. Even without playing time, his presence guarantees attention. ESPN segments, social media clips, podcasts, Arizona basketball stays in the national conversation simply by having LeBron's son on the roster. That exposure resonates with younger recruits who grew up idolizing LeBron. It is telling that Bryce's other primary offer was from Duquesne, coached by Drew Joyce III, LeBron's high school teammate. His recruitment was driven far more by personal connections, entirely driven by nepotistic connections rather than widespread meritocratic scouting interest. As the season unfolds, Bryce's actual standing within the program has become clear. He hasn't logged a single minute of game action. Head coach Tommy Lloyd has openly floated the idea of a redshirt season, framing it as a way to, quote, protect his options. In today's transfer portal era, that explanation carries subtext. Freshmen who are ready, even rotation level players, see the floor. They don't redshirt unless they're injured or clearly not prepared for the level. Bryce hasn't even appeared during extended garbage time minutes, suggesting that putting him on the court risks exposing gaps that would undermine the very image his recruitment was built on. Fan reaction has shifted accordingly. National headlines still chase drama, but locally, the understanding is simpler. Bryce James isn't one of the 10 best players on Arizona's roster, and once the noise fades, that reality is hard to ignore. Is it even possible that LeBron James can get Bryce into the NBA like he did Bronny? This is the ultimate question. The Bronny experiment exhausted a significant amount of LeBron's political capital. Replicating this feat for a player who is demonstrably worse 4 years later presents a geometric increase in difficulty. The primary adversary is time. As a member of the class of 2025, Bryce becomes draft eligible in 2026 after his freshman year. In the 2026 to 2027 season, LeBron James will be turning 42 years old. For LeBron to, quote, get Bryce in, he must still be an active, high-leverage player in the 2026 to 27 season. While LeBron has defied aging with questionable methods, expecting him to hold a franchise hostage at age 42 to draft a player who averaged 0 minutes in college might be a stretch for, quote, the king, but not impossible. Knowing how diabolic, manipulative, and underhanded, devious, and even Machiavellian LeBron and clutch sports can be, I put nothing past them. Bronny James averaged under 5 points a game in college, was subsequently drafted 55th overall, and received a guaranteed contract. If Bryce declares for the 2026 draft, he will be the least qualified draft entrant in modern history. For a team to draft him, they would effectively be burning a pick solely as a marketing expense. Crucially, LeBron James has begun to publicly distance himself from the play with Bryce narrative. In Media Day comments, he stated, quote, he's not waiting on Bryce. My question is, waiting on what? Oh, you really expect this caliber of player to enter the league if you had more time? This pivot is LeBron, realizing that Bryce will never reach the NBA. He is softening the blow for the likely reality that he will retire before he can work his magic on another franchise. Bronny is without a doubt a bad NBA player, a 6'2" shooting guard that can't shoot, the size of a point guard that can't pass or play make, and he's the talented one. May God bless America. The most likely success scenario for Bryce is not the NBA draft. It is an Exhibit 10 contract, an undrafted free agent deal with whichever team LeBron is playing for in his final season, 2026 to 27, allowing Bryce to play for that team's G League affiliate. This technically fulfills the dream of, quote, being in the organization, but it is a far cry from being a true NBA player, and that's the real story here. The angle isn't simply that Bryce is worse than Bronny. It's that the belief he would be better was a collective delusion, a narrative built by a culture desperate for the sequel to outperform the original, hope masquerading as evaluation. That narrative is now dead. Like, subscribe, share, and maybe even hype the video. Let me know if you believe that Bryce is better than Bronny, and if LeBron can get Bryce an NBA contract. Thanks for watching.